everybody. Thanks for your post this week and kind of reflections on the text from both or well, I guess all three, from the Evans, from the Jones, and also from the Bell book. So just kind of want to kind of start off with making some connections and reflections on everyone's post this week. So kind of want to start it off with Thomas. So you talked a lot about the critical race theory. You mentioned a little bit about intersectionality, but really gave a really good breakdown as far as kind of what it is and kind of its impact and influence to higher education. So just kind of going back and doing a little reflecting and reading after seeing everything. Just kind of wanted to go back and create some connections as far as its impact on critical race theory, specifically on a higher education. And going back in the Jones text, mentions a little bit about how it really is difficult to understand college student identity without, really understanding some of the other influences and factors on a college campus. So specifically about the college environment, the campus climate, campus programs, policies, and student success. And this is just kind of information coming from the Jones text on page 169. Which kind of brings in a connection with Samantha, really talking about what is that environment that we're creating for our students in order for them to be successful, particularly for those students who maybe are that minority group or a part of a minority group. How do we make sure that we're creating an inclusive campus and not being exclusive? And you provided a perfect example of someone making an assumption and providing a resource for a majority of students, which at the end of the day, if we're just simply looking at percentage-wise, we're doing a great job because we're getting the most of our students, but at the same time, we're also discriminating and kind of avoiding providing these equal opportunities for students of different backgrounds and things like that. So particularly, like I said, going into your example about the dining hall, providing food particularly for students, for Lent, but maybe not for Ramadan or for Passover or any other religious holiday or anything else like that. We don't take that into consideration, and that makes a difficult and more hostile environment for a campus and not necessarily as welcoming. And Samantha, you really pushed a little bit more, on emphasizing about kind of that social justice piece of it, and I think that really kind of ties into, making sure that if we're providing this service for this group of students, we also need to be able to provide it for this other group, this smaller group. So I think it's absolutely essential that campuses do have, and Wilmington does, and many other campuses do, having those safe places for some of those, smaller or minority groups on campus. So particularly like an LGBT center, even a women's center. Like here on campus on UNC Wilmington, the Centro Hispano, as well as the Upperman Center, they're having those comfortable places for students who may not necessarily fit into the majority in regards to race or even possibly ethnicity. And I think that is a really great tie-in, as well as to kind of comment a little bit about Will. When you talk a lot about in your post this week was a lot about kind of privilege. You also mentioned a little bit about the Ren's mixed race identity development theory in the Evans book, which also talks about I think a little bit about kind of the impact of kind of the space and kind of culture on that identity development. I'm particularly kind of talking about some of that privilege, and Gina, you mentioned this as well. That there's a lot of times that we don't really necessarily think about what privilege that we have in front of us. There probably are those moments in time we absolutely do recognize it and can understand, but as we're functioning kind of day to day, whatever privileges we have, that's something that we've grown up with, we've gotten used to, or even if some things have changed, we are used to that now. We haven't had to change or reflect, and so for us kind of challenging what is that norm, and it kind of goes back to in the Jones text, and Will mention this as well, about seeing kind of that segregated environment, particularly kind of in a lunchroom, and how very much that is true, that people are going to separate out themselves, and they're going to try to identify with people who they think and they look like that they most identify with. Now, is that necessarily the case? No, that may not be at all. You may look the same, or the group may be the same, but you guys aren't they're not. And that kind of ties back into Gina. You kind of compare that comparison. Race is kind of the outer view of a person, where ethnicity is the inner view. And we have to, as good practitioners and good you know student affairs officers, we can't assume that we understand all groups. In particular, I think that's also really important when we're working with our student athletes, and understanding, while as a larger population they are student athletes, but at the same time they are also individuals, and they come from different backgrounds, and really kind of embracing the individuality of all of those people. So, like I said, some really great perspectives on what we're kind of reading this week, and really as well. Like I said, I really kind of thought it was cool how a lot of people brought up and made me kind of have a better idea about the impact of the environment, particularly on some of these identities, and how students represent and identify and choose all those. So it's a really great thing. So give me some interesting options as far as to kind of help narrow down what my map will be for this module. So thanks again, and y'all have a great weekend.